Welcome to the Plant Cunning Podcast,
where we explore our relationship to plants, other people, and the mysteries of nature.
Coming to you from the high Allegheny Plateau in central New York.
We are your hosts, A.C. Stauble
and Isaac Hill. Welcome to another episode of the Plant Cunning Podcast. In today's episode, we are interviewing Barbara Wilkinson from the Herb Society, UK. Barbara is an amazing herbalist, gardener, and ambassador of the Herb Society. We really enjoy talking with her, and I think you're going to love this episode. Before we get to it, I just want to share again that the Plant Cutting Conference is happening at our small farm in person. It's September 9th and 10th, and it's going to have a lot of amazing speakers such as Matthew Wood and Kate Gilday and Zamboni Funk. Also, it's sponsored by Woodland Essence. It's a high-quality herbal product line that brings people in touch with the healing nature offers. They create beautiful flower, tree, and chakra essences, extracts, salves, creams, and a line of extracts following the Buhner protocol for Lyme. Their connection with their work and the plants and nature is evident in their products and their commitment to supporting other herbal businesses, as well as our conference. And we interviewed Kate a few months ago, and it was a wonderful interview. She's an amazing person, so glad to be promoting Woodland Essence and very happy that they are sponsoring the conference. You can find them at woodlandessence.com, and you can come see Kate's class at the conference on how to create your own tree essences. So let's get to it. Here's Barbara. So today on the Plant Cutting Podcast, we have Barbara Wilkinson of the Herb Society. She's an herbalist in the UK. And Barbara, how are you today?
Great, thank you. Even though it's raining here in Britain, we had a decent morning, but now we've got some rain. Plants are loving it.
Nice. Yeah, it's been really rainy here too.
Yeah, it was a sunny day today, but they need that sun from all the rain.
They do. It might be summer, but July in Britain means thunderstorms and usually lots of rain. So
nice.
Being true to form.
Yeah. So Barbara, how did you come to the plant path originally?
Yeah, well, it was how I was brought up. My grandfather and my mother were herbalists, but untrained.
Oh.
But back in the day of my grandparents' day, certainly in this country and many others, a lot of people would have had knowledge about herbs and would have been using them as food and medicine and all sorts of other things. And if they had knowledge and somebody wanted help, they would have helped them. And although I didn't know my grandfather, my mother was brought up like that. And that's certainly how I was brought up. So we weren't vaccinated fully, like a lot of children around me. And it's not until you get into school years that you begin to realize that families are a bit different and not everybody's the same. So I never went to doctors. We were treated at home, and we had a house full of herbs. And there used to be local herb shops where we could go and buy things from. And the herb shop was sort of place handed down in generations, and you more or less had a consultation each time you went in. And so it was a very traditional way of life and one that I was used to. So to me, it was very natural, really. And then I found it all very strange that other people were doing other things, which seemed very weird. And I wondered why.
Right.
So as I've gone on in life, I've continued it because it's been my interest, my upbringing. And although I went into the food industry, I was interested in food from a health perspective, as opposed to just working in the hotel and catering industry, which I initially went to do my training in, because I realized it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And I was around in the era of, the macrobiotic diet coming into fashion and all sorts of things. And I was just absorbing all that knowledge and information at the time, learning as much as I could. Because I do believe we're lifelong learners. If we've got an interest and a passion, we just nourish ourselves in it all the time, don't we? And Absolutely. That's what I've always done. But later in life, I've got 2 children, and my son wanted somebody else's opinion other than mum's. So I took him to see a herbalist who at the time I didn't know existed, and she was just 15 minutes away from me. And it was just like being really back at home and in my comfort zone. And she said exactly what I'd said to him. And he was happy and happy with the outcome. And then I immediately struck up a relationship. And that was it, really. That what took me down the route of finding out, you know what, you can have a way of life doing this and helping others. You can qualify. You're not taught that, are you? You don't know.
So what is that process like of qualifying to be a medical herbalist in the UK? Because in the US, it's a lot different, I think. We're there's not the higher programs.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Well,
what's the process like?
Well, eventually in Britain, there was a number of universities that were given funding to run degree courses. So you could apply to university and basically do a 3-year full-time course. Some of them you could do it part-time and it would take longer. But as the time and the years went on and things started happening, the funding started to be cut and the universities courses started to close and to fold. And there was a lot of concern in this country as to what was going to happen, how we were going to continue with the herbalists. So a lot of schools set up, which were outside of these places of university. And they were usually passionate people with a bit of land and were willing to start teaching and set courses up. And that has developed. And many of those courses became diplomas, but they were of the same standard as a degree, but they became diplomas. And of course, they wanted to facilitate people that couldn't work full-time at education and attend full-time. So distance learning was something that had to be done. So lots of changes started to come in, and I was part of that package. I didn't want to attend 3 years full-time at the very few university courses that were left. So I did distance learning, but with the need to attend clinical hours, which were exactly the same as if I was doing it in a 3-year course, so 500 hours of clinical training, etc., etc. So it actually took me 6 years to do my professional course, and that was pretty good going, actually. And I was working the whole of that time, actually, with my herbalist friend that I met through my son. So I was learning from her knee, really, at the same time as then doing my course. So loving it. I was very lucky. Not many people get that opportunity.
Well, that seems very important to have the curriculum, but also have like a one-on-one mentor.
Totally. And any of us that have done any studying and been students in any way, you know you can't beat having that person that you can feel confident to just ask questions, because no question is silly, or you want to be sure about your information. You want somebody that you can have that conversation with, or you want to be shown. I'm a quite practical person, very hands-on, and I like to understand things in a practical way, as well as having the science, the chemistry, the everything else that one needs. I want to see it done. I want to feel the plants. I want to understand how to produce a tincture. I want to know my end result, what it should be like, etc., etc. So to me, that's vitally important. You can't shortcut that in any way, can you?
No. And you also had the advantage of growing up as a 3rd-generation herbalist from, your folks and grandfolks.
Absolutely. It felt very natural, and it felt like something that I just wanted to learn more of. And you reach a certain stage in life where opportunities present themselves. And I was fortunate. I was fortunate that I could actually take that sort of time to devote to my education, my progression. And and you work at it. It's a lot of work, it's hard work, and starting your professional training at 50 isn't something many people want to do. I'd never turned a computer on, didn't have a mobile phone, so new world.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're able to adapt, and to learn those skills.
That's life, isn't it? In truth, where you have to rise to the challenge and give it a go. Yeah.
And so can you tell us a little bit about the Herb Society too, and its founder, Hilda Lael? Is that how you say it, Lael?
Yes, it is. Sounds wonderful in your accent. Yes. Well, I'd started out practicing and having my own practice. And of course, because I'm quite vocal about what I do and passionate about herbs, I do public speaking, I do events, I get invited to do all sorts of things. And so naturally, the Herb Society of UK heard about me. And it was at the time when one of the people that were advising them on the medical side was no longer available. And they wanted somebody, because they produced magazines and newsletters and they were giving out information, and they wanted to be sure of their information. So they wanted somebody with the medical training and background, because that's a huge part of what the Herb Society is about. And so they asked me if I would consider being a trustee. And of course, I was delighted, because I was already a member, and finding out more about how it came about, the Herb Society, and what it stands for, both then and now, to me, is very important. It's our past, present, and future. It's our history, it's our culture. So to me, that's vitally important that we keep the education, because it's an educational charity, and that we keep that remit alive. We're the only charity that's about the education of herbs, not just for medicine, but for crafts, for art, for food, for gardening. It's for every aspect of herbs. So it's amateurs and professionals.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate, very lucky, and I've done about 9 years. I think I'm going in my 10th year with them now. And lots of changes. It's not easy for a charity getting volunteers. We don't apply for outside funding, so I've even learned, for a woman who didn't have a phone or turn a laptop on, I've learned how to do social media, and I do Instagram daily for them.
Wow, that's awesome.
I had to ask my children how to do that, but I do it daily, and that's brought us over 48,000 followers. And it's not really about the followers, it's about the fact that we're out there and people know that we exist, and that's how we've connected, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty good for not knowing anything about social media.
Yeah, I know. It's quite amazing, and I'm still not very technically minded, but I do it. Very fortunate. I have a very good camera, but I enjoy it. It's just another part of what I do every day.
Yeah, it looks like you'd recently had an awesome event with Emma Farrell and Lucy Jones online, an educational.
Yes, we have. That's a new field for us, because, we're not used to doing that, and there's not a lot of us on the team that run the Herb Society, and not a lot of volunteers, and we rely on people helping and assisting. And the online event was very successful, and it's a new venture. We did one a little bit earlier, and then we did this one. And there's a lot of demand for it and a lot of interest. We just hope that we've got the time and the skill set to be able to keep that going. So the more help we get, the better, really, because it was wonderful. And a guest that you had on not long ago, my good friend Lucy, was on as well.
Yes.
Lucy Jones.
Yes.
And Lucy and I did the same training. We did the same professional training, and my mentor was also hers. She didn't live close enough, sadly, but Lucy and I know each other very well and work in a very similar way.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
We love talking with Lucy. She's great.
Yeah. So before we get too far in other directions, how did the Herb Society start, and what is its main purpose? And
how did it come about? Well, it was interesting, because you think that the modern times are just what's going on now, but in Hilda Lale's time, the government actually wanted to ban the use of herbs, and they were promoting pharmaceuticals. This was after the Second World War, and they wanted to stop herbalists from working, whether trained or not. And she was a herbalist, and she was very concerned about this, because this new Medicines Act was coming in, and people wouldn't have access to herbs or herbalists. It would all be banned. So, being a woman of some wealth and standing, she got her friends together, and she lobbied the government, and she took her case there, and they amended the act to ensure that herbalists could continue to work as long as they work like doctors, and that is through consultations rather than just selling. Remember, this is before the days of the online business and Etsy shops and all these things. And so people had to have consultations, and then if they had consultations just like doctors, they could continue to work. So that was a requirement, and herbs would still be accessible. But as we all know, over the years, they're still messing with herbs not being available, being taken off the shelves for all sorts of reasons, and things happening. So really, the Herb Society was originally, it had a different title in Hilda's name. It was the Society of Herbalists. It was her group, and she would invite people to become members of her group and not charge them, and then she could treat them. And that's how it actually started. So it started to protect herbal medicine. And that's why I think all herbalists should know about it and be involved, because those things are still cropping up today. There's still some problems that are still happening. And the foundation of it was to protect herbal medicine and protect the herbalists and give people a choice about their healthcare.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea too, for how to get around those kind of laws. I mean, the same thing happened in the US around that time, where the pharmaceutical companies were and the medical doctors lobbied the government and got laws passed, and herbalists were thrown in jail.
Yeah.
And so on.
Before that, we were burnt at the stake, and
Right.
all
Yeah.
sorts of other things, all the witch trials and everything. Yeah, there's lots of nasty things gone on over the centuries. It's all about knowledge, isn't it? Power and control. And back in the day of the witches and Pendle Hill, the Lancashire area and everything, it was predominantly women, but there was a lot of men involved. They had that knowledge, they had that wisdom, they used it, they helped people. And then suddenly other people wanted that knowledge and wisdom and didn't want those people having it. And that's when it all really got nasty, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that resurgence. Like you said, people are hungry for it. People are hungry for the knowledge. I am seeing that like across the world. I think because the pharmaceutical industry is letting us down as a people, we're not seeing the results that we were promised. And
quite. It's been trialed for long enough now. It's about 100 years of a trial. Yeah. One thing I always like to say is herbal medicine is the original medicine of all life on earth. Everything came from plants, and the alternative complementary is only in the last 100 years, and that's what has been rolled out and trialed and tested, and in many cases has become more problematical. And people now in our generation lifetime are discovering that these super drugs are not quite as super as they thought they were, and in actual fact there's a lot of problems and a lot of difficulty with it, and people are now more nervous and apprehensive. And rightly so, because there's an awful lot of information out there. It's not the fault of doctors or people that have taken all this time to train and do these things, but there's something very wrong. There's something very wrong.
So regarding like the regulations and the government or pharmaceutical, influence or pressure, like how is it operating as an herbalist today in the UK? Like, what kind of hoops do you have to jump through?
Well, as a registered herbalist, to ensure that you've got an alcohol license, you're insured and all those things, being registered is important. And in Britain, what a lot of the general public don't realise is the difference between a registered herbalist who can call themselves a consultant herbalist, a medical herbalist. They can have whatever title and letters after the name of what they've qualified, but being registered is a huge distinction between being a herbalist. And many people say, oh, you're a herbalist. It's like a homeopath. And I have to explain to people, and this is about where it's important that we that are doing these jobs are educating people into the difference in being a home herbalist. It could be wonderful. It could have a lot of knowledge, could have been handed down even in generations, could be really absolutely super. But the difference between registered and herbalist is quite distinct. And we do have to have, as registered, a medical training. So the first 2 years of the course in this country is like going to be a GP, going to be a doctor. And again, the general public don't know that. And then when we qualify, we have to continue our professional development to bring it to our practices so that we are continually learning and keeping up to date, just like doctors have to do. And again, people are not aware of that. So we need to be telling people, we need people to be aware of the difference and the distinction in the two. And regulations have been talked about and been brought in, and other things potentially like the statutory requirements and all sorts of things. And some things have been put on hold because other things have happened, but they're still there. There's still potentially there. There's still the potential for things to occur and restrictions and limitations to be brought in. And as I said earlier, with a number of herbs, take comfrey root, for example, all registered herbalists are told they can no longer use that internally. And that's been the same for a number of years because of the science that's been done, the information that's come out about the PAs. Now, for centuries, herbalists have safely been using comfrey root. And those that are trained know about the safety aspects. And as they treat the individual and not the symptoms, and they would never use it for long term, and they would only use certain doses, then to treat everybody as being the same, presuming we don't have the knowledge and the skills, makes a lot of people frown, actually, and causes a lot of concern. But you can't actually buy comfrey root anymore in Britain. It was taken off the shelves in its tablet form, its tincture form, and you can't actually buy it from herb suppliers. So if you would want to use it externally as it's officially supposed to be for registered herbalists, then you would have to grow your own.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good thing it grows pretty easily.
I was brought up on it. I was
Yeah.
completely brought up on it. Any bump, any bruise, I was fortunate. I never broke anything, but knit bone was always there. Comfrey has been in this country for centuries and still is, and there's absolutely masses of it. It's a bit like horseradish in my area. There's masses of it, but the general public are not aware, so they'll go to a plant place and look to buy a plant of horseradish, which always makes me smile because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's not everywhere here, but when I first started growing it, I just got a root from Walmart in the ground. And it grew. Yeah, horseradish. And now there's hundreds of plants.
Yeah, absolutely. We're often told, aren't we, it won't grow in your country. You need certain conditions, ashwagandha being one, turmeric being another. It just won't grow. Actually, it does, like Hydrastis canadensis, it won't grow. It does grow. You can grow. The properties might not be the same, and I'm of a firm belief that ashwagandha root won't be the same grown in Britain as what it is in India. The properties potentially they won't be the same because the weather's not the same, the soil's not the same, etc. Same with turmeric. But you can grow it to learn about the plant, because a lot of the growing that I do and encourage others to do is so that you live with the plant, you learn from the plant, you experience the plant, you get to know it on a much deeper level. Exactly. I think that's very, very important. Very, very important. I'm really keen to work with the plants that are plentiful and are in my area and easily accessible. And the older I get, the more I'm looking at that, because that's where your sustainability comes in.
I'll never forget the first time I saw ashwagandha growing in a herbalist garden in Massachusetts. I was just like, we can do that? We can grow that here? Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have a good friend, and she grows Hydrastis up in the Lake Districts, and very successfully. It's superb. Now we're always told it's an endangered plant. Don't even bother ordering it. Most suppliers won't supply it anymore. But you know what? You can actually grow your own, and you can soon have a field full.
Yes.
Yeah, it grows really well.
Yeah.
You can also harvest it all at, in a very short time, but it does grow well.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit like gardening. You're always told that put your seed in at a certain time and do this, that, and the other. Actually, the only way you're going to learn is by doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't be put off just by reading the book or somebody telling you something. Actually find out, experience it, try it, and you can have many surprises, good ones.
I think that's the key, is the experiential part, and that's what builds like intuition also, and like a knowledge that isn't just theoretical. And that's, I think, another reason why it's so important to be growing the plants and to know the plants and to get to know them on a personal level. Totally.
Yeah, it's a totally different world rather than just buying everything in. I've never been that kind of herbalist, never wanted to be. I'm very much, as I said at the start, hands-on. I want to know the plants. It's like gardeners always say, right plant, right place. Yeah. For us as herbalists, right plant for right person, because we've hundreds to choose. So, and how do we select which one for what patient? Because we know the plants. And also we take the time and the energy to get to know the individual. This is why we have long consultations and we work in a different way than orthodox medicine, because we're getting to know the individual. And again, what you say about intuition, huge player, huge part of it, because we relate to that level of what we're actually doing.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking a little bit before about like buying herbs in, and how, like, we're growing calendula. We know what calendula is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be vibrant yellow and orange, but people are getting in like brown calendula.
It's shocking. Not only that, when herb suppliers sell it in this country, they only sell the petals, and the most medicine, as we know, is in that central rosette.
Yeah, all the resin.
And of course, with calendula, there are many varieties, like a lot of herbs, a lot of cultivars, and they've never been tested. We don't actually know. We've not potentially used them, but yeah, there's certain plants that we want the right one. We want the right exact thing that we know, that we've worked with and that we've trained with. And it's so important. It's such a shame when people just get calendula petals. They're missing most of the medicine.
It seems like harder to do too, to like pull all the petals off or maybe they're like garbling them or something,
It's
but
in a
it's like
machine.
kind of easier to just harvest the whole flower and put it in the
Absolutely,
strainer
absolutely.
dehydrator.
It's probably done by some machine, you know, these
Probably.
big processes. It's not done how we do it. Because we
Yeah.
do little and often when we're harvesting, don't we? Because the plants don't all come at the same time. So maybe it's a bit like sweet peas. We pick them every other day, and then we get prolonged life. And it's the same with calendula. We pick little and often, like the cornflowers, like all the other summer things. We're not harvesting the whole crop. They're just continually coming throughout the summer months. So we're going to our plants every day.
Exactly.
The relationship, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
a relationship.
Fill up your dehydrators, and it's just about enough, perfect amount for the dehydrators.
Yeah. Now, you know, I don't use dehydrators.
So yeah, how do you process your
Oh,
herbs?
shock horror. Most people do. No, I don't use them. I am old school. In the summer months when the air is dry, I will hang in small bunches certain plants, my hallway, spare bedrooms, anywhere out of direct sunlight with a passage of air. So the whole house is, you've seen the Agatha Christie movies, sometimes looks a bit like that, some people say. But I have hair suspended from the ceiling like a herb racks where you can put them in as well and leave them to dry. But I'm so old school with a boiler system that I have an airing cupboard. I was brought up with an airing cupboard, and I keep an airing cupboard. And
So
I know
what
this
is an airing cupboard?
What is an airing cupboard? You might not have them. Might not have them in America in your generation. It's a system of heating the water for either your central heating or your hot water system. And it can be on a system like it's a big tank that heats up. Maybe you got it on a timer and it comes on in the morning and the evening for just your hot water. In the winter, it would also click on and it would do your heating system. Yeah, very old school. So when you live with things like that, you get to know the heat that it, also if it's not fully enclosed, the water tank, some of the heat will come off, which some people say that's not very environmental, but I'm using it. I'm using that heat. I'm not plugging into the electricity for something else in a dehydrator. So what is coming off, I'm using to help dry my herbs. And all different herbs lay out and put inside there take different lengths of time. Flowers, leaves, stems, they'll take different lengths of time. And over the years of doing it, you get to know how long it's going to need without doing them for too long, drying them out for too long and losing them properties. So the airing cupboard is in use all year round. It works a treat. And in the summer months, there's some hanging goes on and there's the using the air dryers.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah, so completely different. No dehydrators.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be very humid here in the summer. So it can be hard for that final crisp sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
Like dry them out for a while and then
because don't want to lose them, all that work and effort. No, and then you put them together and then you get all the fungal growth. No,
right.
You can't have that.
It's a learning process, learning not only when to harvest when herbs are at the best, but how to dry correctly and how to store correctly. It's all part of the job. It's all part of the important part of caring for your plants and doing what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I think it's very important because also, as we were mentioning before we started recording, you're saying how a lot of herbs are hard to get these days too. Yeah. So why do you think that is?
A bit of a theory, not, nothing, haven't been told, but the trend, the fashion is supermarket shopping. And supermarkets sell a lot of tea bags. And of course, they have to have constant supply all year round. Their shelves have to be stocked. So herb suppliers, it will all be coming from the same sources. So the herbs will be going to the people to produce the tea bags to supply the supermarkets. So that's one avenue of a lot of stock now going that route that never went that route before. Herbal teas were not that plentiful 20, 30 years ago. Certainly in Britain, the demand wasn't the same, and now it's huge. It's absolutely massive. And then you've got the nutritionist world who have gone very much into herbs in their supplements. So a lot of the nutritionist companies that supply things in pill form, they also have gone very trendy and fashionable with a lot of powders as well, because everybody's juicing and smoothing and putting things on the porridge and all sorts of things. So powders have become very popular as well. So there's a supply and demand required there in vast quantity, and it's going that route. And some of the supplements, as we know, are owned by pharmaceutical companies, the people with a lot of control and a lot of money, and they take vast amounts of stock. So we herbalists with our own practice are the poor relation. We aren't spending money, we aren't the mega bucks. So maybe the herb suppliers supplying the herbalists are not getting the quantity anymore because the turnover isn't as great. It's all about supply and demand, isn't it? It's about who has the money.
Yeah.
The money's needed. And in my lifetime, all those things have changed. There never used to be supplements. We used to get our vitamins and minerals, and everything else was from our food and drink. And when I was a child, it was clean. We didn't have the term organic, but it wasn't what it now is at all. It was completely different. So we never went to pills to get our vitamins and our minerals. And yet now that's where people think it all comes from.
And it's such a bummer because the capsules and the powders have such a short shelf life. And so a lot of times when you're buying these capsules, the herbs have already
deteriorated.
Yeah.
It's like I'm forever pointing out to people who, linseeds are great, linseed or flax, whatever you want to call them, absolutely marvelous. But as soon as it's ground, half an hour later, it's rancid. Yeah. You won't smell it, but it won't do you and your liver any good at all. And yet the supermarkets are selling pre-ground, pre-cracked seeds and nuts to people who think they're getting a healthy diet because they've read and they've learned that linseed's really good for me. It helps protect my heart. It helps, my bowel health and all this sort of thing. But they're buying it pre-ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a principle there that people don't think about. It's that the more whole something is, the less it oxidizes.
Yeah.
So why don't they think? Sadly, it's because they're not taught. It's not pointed out. And we, I think, are educators. We are teachers as well with what we do, because we've got a lot of knowledge. And knowledge is actually wisdom if it's used in the right way. So it's not just the knowledge. So we have to pass on the wisdom. And actually, when we point these things out to people, the penny, old-fashioned term, the penny drops. They get the message and they think, I've not thought about that. I really hadn't realized that. Why don't they tell you that? Because people still think that they are doing the best for you and they are supplying you with the best and they're going to tell you if things aren't right. But no, it doesn't work like that.
They're just trying to make money.
Yeah, it's a business. Yeah. It's a business and it's all about money. And, so we do have a choice, but I think it is our responsibility as herbalists, because we help people with their lifestyle. First interviews, hour and a half spent with people, not 10 minutes in a clinic, but an hour and a half. We're finding out what their life's like. What do they think? What do they listen to? What do they do? What do they eat? What do they drink? When do they do that? When do they go to bed? How soon do they get to sleep? We're looking at the detail. And some of them themselves as patients haven't really looked at the detail themselves. And we are bringing that to the fore, and then the penny starts to drop. They might not want to change it in some cases, but they see what they're doing themselves to perhaps create issues and problems.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
And doctors can't even do that. They don't have the time to do that.
No, that's where we are at our best, because we devote a lot of time. And we have a lot of time and tolerance and patience. But really, we want to work with people who get it, who understand it and want to work with us. That's important. We don't want people that just keep coming back and paying us money to keep coming back. We want people to get better and to be self-care, self-respect, know what they're doing, learn, progress.
I'm curious if the culture in the UK is more accepting of herbalists than it is in the US, because a lot of times people come to herbalists after they've tried a doctor, a specialist, and they're at their last resort, and then they come to the herbalist who they maybe didn't take as seriously as the allopathic doctors. But do people come to the herbalist first more in the
No, in most cases it's exactly the same as you. Been there, done everything else, tried everything, it hasn't worked. been doing it for donkey's years, maybe been on, medications to reduce stomach acid for 20 years, not knowing that that's exactly the opposite of what they were actually needing, and we can fix it within a fortnight. So sadly, we get people all the time, don't we, across the world, who have put their faith and trust in other things and other people. And it's like, I've tried it all, so you're my last resort. But then you get others who have worked it out, something happens, and the first protocol is us. They wouldn't go anywhere else. They're a dream to work with.
Yes.
They're absolutely lovely, because we're not really here to convince others that this is the original medicine and the right way to go. They have to learn that. They have to come to that realization themselves. And they have to also realize that a large part of their triggers and problems are what they are doing within their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So this is where education's key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's such a crucial thing, because I think there are some important uses for allopathic medicine, like emergency situations,
Trauma medicine.
Trauma.
Yeah.
But for most people have, it's like the upkeep and like those patterns that of diet and so on that create a out of balance life.
Yes.
And that's what an herbalist can help with so much.
Precisely. And in reality, you'll find the same, that a lot of the time when the patient's explaining things to us, they're already answering their own questions. I had a lady in this morning talking about her sleep, who's been a problem for years. What time does she go to bed? About 11:45. All her other symptoms will be as a result of a sluggish liver that isn't repairing and renewing because she's not giving it the time that it needs. But trying to get somebody to gradually bring their bedtime forward so that their body clocks can be working efficiently, their function will improve. It's like learning a different way, isn't it, than what they've perhaps realized or even thought about. But we are no different than our ancestors, are we? We're the same as our ancestors. We have the same needs and requirements. We're not designed to live in this fast-paced 24/7 lifestyle with all this extra stimulus.
Exhausting.
It's no wonder people say I've got brain fog and I'm burnt out and all this is wrong. Well, is it any wonder?
Yeah.
Is it any wonder? That's where the wisdom comes in, and that's where we have a responsibility to remind people that we're no different than their great-grandparents and beyond.
And that's probably why you're more drawn to the garden too these days, like all of this technology and this input, like you have to balance it with time with the plants and nature to ground down and release.
Yeah, you do. I'll do a certain amount, but it's not my first port of call. Nobody's more amazed than me that I've managed to do this sort of thing with you today. It's an achievement, and it's a challenge, and it's great, talking to somebody on the other side of the world. It's absolutely wonderful. So the tools in our toolkit, but how much we do it and how much we want. We're not here to feed ego. We're not here for earning mega bucks, doing all sorts of things. It's a means to an end for certain things, and for the majority of the time, it's having that balance which you talked about, Isaac. It's that balance, as with everything. It's do a bit of this, but do a lot of that. Do a lot of the right things, and the things that bring you joy, and the things that bring you fun and laughter in your life, and comfort and contentment. Very important.
So important. Yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your garden. You have an allotment garden many years, right?
Yeah, a long time. And I'm very lucky. It's just literally at the end of the road where I live. So I can walk down to it, and I can go at any time of the day on any day. And I do go most days because I only have a smallish garden, been in the 1950s properties. And we have a little greenhouse, and we have a shed, and we have grass that we don't mow all summer long, not just as Britain thinks, just in May. No, we leave it all summer long, and we have hedgehogs that come through, and we have everything else, and we feed the birds. And, to us, we're sharing our space. I firmly believe in the we are the ark, that we are guardians of the land and not gardeners.
Oh,
the older I get, the more convinced I am that more people need to grasp that and understand that we're here to share. And the allotment for me is the same. It's a community. You get a plot and you work it in whatever fashion that you want, and you do, and you get as much out of it, put as much in as you want, but it has to be cultivated to be in the rules and regulations of the allotment society. But my plot is different than everybody else's plot. I have a lot of permanent planting. I never let the soil be bare, because we know it washes away and it blows away, and the land wants to be clothed. It needs to be. We need to let nature come in, and we need to share it. So if you want 6 lettuce, plant 22, and you might just get 6 if you're lucky. We share. We share. So it's that, and it's that learning curve, and it's discovery. And my husband had a very difficult time when he first started to share the space with me, because he kept saying, well, do you want this? Don't you want that? And well, I want most of it. Wait and see. Let's let it flower. Let's see what it is. Let's discover what turns up of its own accord. And then, oh, joy.
Yeah.
More than what we intended. So it's a wonderful space, because it's like an extension to the garden. And if I was wealthy and had lots of land, then, you'd do it probably in your own space, but I'm not in that position. So in Britain, there is a tradition of allotments, and I'm very lucky to have one, and I hate to be without it, because I grow not just my herbs, but I grow fruit and vegetables, and I have wildlife spaces. I even have a sunken bath.
Ooh.
Yeah, so lots of frogs. Bog bean shares the bath.
Awesome.
It's absolutely wonderful, and I can share plants and seed from that, not just on the allotment site, but with fellow herbalists, students, and people in the Herb Society. And I like to do that.
I love that. I love sharing plants. My mom is a big plant sharer. Every time she comes, she breaks me off a little chunk of something.
Yeah, that's the way it is. Same with house plants.
Yeah.
Same with anything. Spread the love. Every home needs living things. I have a particular loathing of the silk and the plastic.
Ooh, yeah.
Things. I really get it. I really don't. And I think it's a sin against nature.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and there's no excuse. We want low maintenance. Question yourself, what does low maintenance really mean?
Yeah. And then there's always the dried plants. So if you want a dried wreath all winter long, like you can do that. You don't need fake flowers. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have lots of that around the house as well, and love it and enjoy it, and it's, but real things for real people.
How big is the allotment garden? About what size is it?
Bigger than my garden at home, and people are always surprised when they see it, because it's from the front of a path to the very back, and it's bordered with like a hawthorn hedge, which we also have hops running up it and other things beside, and birds nest in the hedge. So actually it's quite big. Quick run through of a few plants. Would you like to know what I've
I want to hear all about it.
Apart from comfrey, which is used for medicine, I also have Bocking 14 to make the fertilizer.
Awesome.
I've got lots of nettles for wildlife and for using and for making fertilizer as well. I have 3 huge compost areas as well. We have rows of raspberries for autumn fruiting raspberries, black currants, red currants. And then herb wise, because we've space to put veg, it's like companion planting, things go between each other. We grow our own garlic and onions, things of that sort, peas, different types of beans, barlotti, French beans. So all the seasonal things in the greenhouse, tomatoes and cucumbers in the main, a few chilies. But in the herbs, I've got lovage, good King Henry, thyme, mints in containers, different mints. There's St. John's wort, there's agrimony, there's bugleweed, there's inula, elecampane. It just goes on and on. There's hundreds. The betony, Stachys botanica.
Oh yeah,
absolutely love it. It's in full flower at the moment. It's stunning. So there's masses of things, which means I can be very self-sufficient. Lots of dandelions, of course, for roots and leaves, flowers, calendula, plantain, So it means that I can be very self-sufficient in many, many things, not to mention daisies and self-heal and all the things that crop up in the grasses as well. Yarrow, achillea, yeah, lots of things, plus some oxide daisies. So yeah, and it's endless. I've never counted, I don't really know. Lots and lots of chives because of just loving them, to bring the pollinators in as well. So it's a shared space and not just with humans.
Beautiful.
Right.
Yeah, it's important, isn't it?
Yeah, so important. And not only to have the fresh herbs, but to be able to spend time in the garden and rebalance yourself. And
absolutely. Sometimes you just go down there and you just stand and stare. So I sit on a chair and you're not actually doing anything, but you're just listening to the birds, watching the grasses blow, touching, getting the fragrance. You're just loving it.
Yeah.
So you've also done some garden design too, though, right? Like I saw on your bio that you did RHS stuff.
So RHS do big shows around the country, and through the Herb Society, this has always been involved because it's a way of promoting that the charity exists and getting people to be aware of what we do, an opportunity to talk to people. So yeah, I've done garden designs in showgrounds, both at Tatton and at Malvern in this country. And I've also worked as a demonstrator. I did fermented food, actually, and other things beside. So yeah, the Herb Society has opened doors and given me opportunity. And people have got to know me. And as you see, what expression we used in Lancashire, not shy of coming forward. I enjoy having the opportunity to share the things that I too enjoy and the passions of the types of things with nature that I enjoy, and to be with like-minded people. It's all bringing people into the community, and it's what they call networking these days. But it's important that we have our contacts and our people that we can reach out to and that we can work together, because it's only through working together that we will keep herbs alive. It's our future. We have to work together. We have to know one another, and we all have to be working towards the same ends for the same reasons, because the herbs must not be dumbed down, must not be ignored and forgotten.
Because if they are, then it hurts us in the long run.
Absolutely.
They're
we are dependent on them. It's the same as the insects which are in decline, and the species that have disappeared. We will disappear. We will be gone.
Yeah.
You know, it's that important. It really is.
Yeah.
And you know, as certain other systems sort of collapse, or we lose the trust in them, you know, we need this knowledge and this wisdom available for the future generation.
Definitely. And that's why there's a resurgence once again. It happens, it's like a cycle. It comes round quite regularly. And when there's fear and distrust about anything, then people are seeking. The seekers appear. They want the knowledge, they want the information, and they've got to seek that from the people with the knowledge and the wisdom. And we are those.
Yeah, definitely. So before we wrap up, would you like to share with our listeners a little bit about how they can find the Herb Society and to get involved?
Sure. We have a website, and they can look up the website. I'm sure we'll put links on here for them. And we have lots of overseas members, and they can get digital copy or they can have hard copy, whichever they prefer. But to get involved as a volunteer is wonderful, because behind the scenes on the technology and doing other things, you know, we do book reviews, we have a blog, we write articles for magazines, we do all sorts of things. And with it being for amateurs and professionals, then recipe sharing, talking about gardening, aspects of herbs, crafts, art, everything, poetry. So any link at all, then we are that forum for that link for amateurs and professionals, and we welcome anybody from anywhere. And there is a price to pay for membership, because, you know, we have to pay for things. We have to pay printers for magazines and editorial team. We pay part-time support staff. The majority of us are volunteers that are unpaid, but we'd love people to get involved and to contact us. And we have things from all over the world with 96 years of archive.
Wow.
And when you become a Herb Society member, you get into the membership page, and we are digitizing all the back copies of our magazines. A lot of them are already on. So how much is that worth? All that knowledge, all that information. So it's a way of having your own library in your own home these days. And
Yeah.
we're the very first, and a very new thing is we've now got people to put voices to our articles in our magazine and newsletter for those that have lost the sight.
Oh,
Because we
nice.
find that as people are aging or they've got health problems, they can't read the magazine, they can't read the newsletter, and they might think they can't be a member anymore. And that's sad. That's not what we want at all. We're quite the opposite. We need to find a way to help them. So we've now got people reading for us so they can actually have it read.
I love that.
Yeah, we're the first.
So cool.
We're the first to be doing it. So watch what happens. All the others will start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I also really respect that, it's member funded and you're not dependent on external grants, because
None.
these days so many nonprofits and organizations, their goal is to get a grant, get on the grant pipeline.
Quite.
But then you can become dependent on that, and it really,
we've never been that, and we're
Yeah.
trying desperately hard to not reach out for any external funding. We need advertising. We lost it over the years, like we lost sponsorship. That's why you can't do certain things as well. And finances aren't easy for anybody, but if you believe in something, then you should support it. And membership isn't expensive. And if you want to support the work of education of herbs on all levels, then the Herb Society is the thing. It's what's needed. You've got a Herb Society in America, somewhere in America, and there are some in Australia, and they've all been part of the Hilda Original Foundation.
amazing.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
Awesome. Is there anything coming up that you're excited about, or?
Well, next week I'm working at the RHS Tatton Show, but in a
Ooh.
different capacity, because I do a local radio broadcast once a month, and they've invited me to be the guest presenter. So that'll be fun. I'm let loose with a microphone, and I can go and encourage people to come on air and do a live broadcast. So yeah, that's going to be great fun, because when I do the shows, I'm doing a lot of networking.
Nice.
And it's always fun and light-hearted, because it's like a family day out and people are enjoying it. It's totally different than being in clinic one-to-one with patients, and you know what that's like. So it's a bit like a holiday for me. So part of the week is doing that for a couple of days, and then the other part is working with one of our members on his stand, his herb display, where he'll be selling his plants, and he has the National Collection of Achillea, and he's one of our members, and he's just been at Chelsea Flower Show, and he does all the big shows, and he needs a bit of help, and I'm free, so I'm going to help him. So next week's a busy week.
Wonderful.
Lots of things on, so there's always things happening. And within the Herb Society we now have ambassadors, and they're in different parts of the country, and we're building up our ambassadors. And we want people who work in any field of herbs, not just medical herbalists, but plant growers and people that, we have an affinity with, and artists and anything, ambassadors, but people who can promote us and talk about us. And so that we can gain membership. We have to continually gain membership to help the funds in, like advertising. That's all we've got.
Yeah.
So it's important that people know about us. So the ambassadors, some of them are people like me who are doing events, giving talks. They can hand out our leaflets, they can introduce that the society exists and that you could join, and the many benefits of being in a community and the way of learning from that community. It's important.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, this has been a great conversation, Barbara. Learned a lot, had a lot of fun, and really want to thank you for all the work that you've done for the Herb Society and for getting knowledge out there.
Thank you, and it's been a joy to talk to you both and meet you finally. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Barbara. Enjoy the rest of your day.